Hey everybody, Vince Todd here from the Heroes Foundation's The Summits podcast. Here we are, episode numero uno, Mr. Bryan Babb, good friend, Heroes Foundation board member, but more importantly, cancer survivor, telling us about his cancer story. I hope you enjoy. All right, Cadet Babb.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the Summits podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Your maiden voyage here.
Very impressive.
Well, thank you. We try.
Start low and then aim high, right?
We got to start somewhere.
That's Air Force, though. What the hell?
I know.
So talk to us. Let's start out with born and raised. You're a Hoosier, born and raised, correct?
I am. Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I was born in Indianapolis, spent first 5 or 6 years of my young life in Avon-ish area, probably unincorporated, just outside of Avon. And then we moved to Carmel when I was around 6 or 7. So I grew up in Carmel, went to Carmel High School, graduated from there. And so that was the first formative years of my life.
So you're a Greyhound.
I am.
Yeah. What leading up to high school, I assume you were doing all the usual youth sports,
Yeah.
Carmel Dad's Club, and all that fun stuff.
You know, interestingly, we lived just north of the, and you might remember this, everybody else is probably too young, but the notorious
Wow.
Northside Drive-In.
What are you saying?
Yeah, well.
You're way older than I am.
I know I am. But there was a drive-in that was on the south part of Carmel. We actually lived just north of it.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're
it was
talking about.
awesome. And that
Was
was my
now, was
there
that
was a-
Rangeline Road?
There's
Yes,
a drive-in in Carmel?
There was.
There
yeah.
was, yeah.
Wow.
It's now
All right.
a neighborhood. Or
And it was party central.
Okay.
It was out of control on Monday nights. I'm not joking. Like thousands and thousands of kids would go in there, and it was just a lot of fun. But anyway, so I was almost in North Central. So I played Carmel Dad's Club baseball, but everything else, football, all that stuff early on, I played in basketball. I played in Nora.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I knew a bunch of the North Central kids growing
Yep.
up.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Favorite sport back then?
Oh, football.
Yeah.
Favorite sport today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Still football?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Why football? What about football is your favorite?
You know, I was quarterback. So, you know, from the earliest time that I played the game, and actually back then it was interesting. I have twin 13-year-old boys now, and they never played tackle football in uniform until I want to say the 3rd grade.
Okay. Yep.
And we started in kindergarten back then. We were out there at kindergarten, helmets. Of course, you know, there's the whole CTE thing, and everybody's kind of down on football, and the numbers have been down recently. But it was fun. I enjoyed doing it, and it was good to be, you know, out there, the center of attention, involved in every single play, as opposed to, you know, baseball, which could get boring at times,
Yeah.
especially when you move to kid pitch and it's nothing but one walk after another. And then basketball was fun too, but football was definitely my favorite.
Yeah. So you and I have had this conversation before, both having played quarterback pre-serious concussion protocol and all that stuff. How many concussions by today's technical standards do you think you probably had?
Yeah, so I remember I played quarterback at Carmel. I had one at Carmel that was so bad that I remember, and it was so, and back then, like, being focused on players that were hurt wasn't on anybody's mind. So here I was a starting quarterback, and I remember the entire locker room was emptied, and I was still just sitting there. And one of the managers came up to me, and he's like, "Are you going to take a shower or not?" I was like, "Huh?" I mean, I was completely fogged out. So eventually I was so late getting home I was driving then because I was a senior. My dad actually came back and checked in on me because I hadn't come home. And so that was the one I remember at Carmel, and then at Army. And it's part of my cancer story, to be honest with you, but I got my helmet turned around and I got knocked out of a game. And I literally had no idea where I was.
Yeah.
And it dislocated my jaw. That's how
Wow.
hard the hit was.
Wow.
I never had anything that bad, but I do recall many going back on your back and smacking your head. This is, of course, before field turf and the rubber pellets for the cushioning and all that they have today. Not to take anything away from the hit stuff today, but playing at Chittard, that field that got used by CYO and all that. I mean, that middle
terrible.
patch basically became concrete almost. I remember smacking the helmet on the back on the ground and seeing stars many a time.
No, I know. Yeah. Yeah, it was, I didn't get hit much at Carmel because we threw the ball, but when I played at Army, I was basically a glorified running back, so I got hit all the time.
Yeah. Fun times, good times. So Carmel High School, what class were you?
84.
84. Were you born in 84?
Nope, was not.
Yeah.
6 years. 6 years too early.
It's kind of a family show, but kind of not a family show. So if you want to tell them to whatever, you can.
I've heard it before.
Yeah.
Mostly from my right.
Oh, it's okay.
So 84, you played football. What else? Other sports at Carmel High School?
So I played in junior high. I played all the three balls. I played basketball, baseball, and football. I played baseball and basketball, and back then, the high school was sophomore, junior, and senior. So freshmen were not at the high school. And my sophomore year, I played all three, and then Jim Belden was our coach back then for Carmel, and he said, "You know what? I'm not telling you to do this, but it'd be nice if you get in the weight room, put on some more weight, work on your speed and agility and stuff like that." So I quit both baseball and basketball, and to be honest with you, I regret that.
Yeah.
But I did it to focus on football, and then interestingly, a great guy by the name of Scott Rogers, who's here locally. I was set to start my junior year at Carmel. He moved in from Southport. And he was, I think it was a big hullabaloo, big IHSA thing because he was clearly the quarterback at Southport. He moved into Carmel, and he ended up getting a full ride to Notre Dame for baseball and football. He was a really good athlete. So I did not play my junior year, and so that was nothing that was kind of frustrating. But at the end of the day, I just played football the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So do you keep up with Carmel sports today?
I do. I mean, like, for example, I was watching the basketball game, which was awesome. And interestingly, they were not very good in basketball when I was there.
Okay.
They just weren't. I mean, they were good in the 70s when Herman and those guys were there. They won the state championship back then. But then for many years, they weren't good. When I was there in the 80s and the 90s, and then I think it was the late 90s or the early 2000s, they had all that bad publicity.
Yeah.
But the hazing stuff, but the coach they have now is just phenomenal. And I took my boys 2 years ago because they obviously didn't play last year. I think it was 2 years ago when they beat Ben Davis. And it was one of the more remarkable things I've ever seen in my life. I mean, they had these two little blonde-haired kids, Carmel did, and they were so unbelievably athletic. And everybody Ben Davis just looked like a better, more athletic team.
Yeah.
They had one guy, their big guy, was going to on a full ride to Ohio State for football.
Okay.
And he could motor.
Yeah.
I mean, he really could. But I mean, Carmel did great. So yeah. So I watch them, and I always there's not a lot of love for the old Carmel Greyhounds and the Fishers HSC school system, but I tease them all the time. And
do you think if you were playing today, would you see the field based on the talent that goes through Carmel now? Just because they have so much.
We were pretty big back then.
Okay.
But it is. I mean, it's a question
it's
that
tough.
you got. Yeah, it is. It is. Now, on the other hand, I will tell you this, that, I mean, my boys played on an all-star football team 2 years ago called the Knights, and that's when all the kids in HSC were together, and we beat everybody.
Okay.
We beat Center Grove, we beat Carmel, we beat Westfield, we beat Ben Davis, we beat Warren Central, we beat everybody, and handily. Now, of course, now they're gone.
Yeah.
They're all split up.
Yep.
But there is an advantage that, I mean, those kids, they're all playing in positions that you might not get a chance to play in at Carmel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So high school's over.
High school's over. So I was recruited by the Ivy schools, the academies.
Is that before or post background check?
That was both. I was a good boy.
That's good.
And for the reason that I'm going to tell you about right now, I was completely in love with my girlfriend, and she's like, don't go to any of the academies, don't go to any of the Ivy League schools, don't leave the state of Indiana. So I ended up, long story short, going to DePaul. in Greencastle.
So you made your initial college decision.
Correct. And
based on your girlfriend at the time.
Correct. And I turned down West Point. And I thought my dad was going to kill me. And I went to DePaul, quite frankly, for two reasons. A, Nick Morosis, who was the coach, would follow me at all my Carmel games. He was a great guy and a great coach. And it's a really unique sort of atmosphere there, that great tradition, one of the best traditions out there, in the Monon Bell. And but it was also close enough to where my girlfriend was going to Purdue. So
Boiler up.
What's that? Yeah,
Boiler up.
Yep.
Can we edit that out?
Yeah. Yeah. And at that time, there was a guy named Jim Everett, who was the quarterback there, and Scott Campbell. And they both ended up playing the pros. So it wasn't going to work out for me. So anyway, I went to DePaul for a year, and I was like, I'm not very mature. I can't handle this. I was an SAE. That was out of control, truly out of control. In fact, that house ultimately ended up getting kicked off campus. I think they just repopulated or recolonized or whatever the word is this last year. And so I told my dad, I said, I can't handle this. I need to be told what to do. So he got me another appointment, and I went.
Yeah. So how does that work? If you turned them down initially, you went somewhere else for a year.
Yeah.
You want to reapproach that. I assume they're not just say, oh yeah, the offer's still good.
No. So we had to go back. It was Dan Burton, who was a congressman. He got me the first one I got nominations from Burton and Quayle, and then the second one was just, I don't know how Dad did it, but he did it, and he got one from Burton again, and so I went. And then I also had a football assist. And I wasn't crazy recruited by them, but it helps getting into those academies when you have an athletic assist.
Sure.
As we know, our friend that got all the fake polo players and no, seriously,
Rowing.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But no, so that helped because if you're not, the non-athletes that just get into those places like on their academic credentials are like crazy intelligent and have crazy good test scores. Mm-hmm. Like I was like a 50 SAT or something like that.
Not bad.
Well, it wasn't bad, but it wouldn't have been good enough to get into West Point. Not even close.
What are the scores these days? For me, it was like out of 1,800 or something, or 2,200.
I think it's
16. I think it's
16. Yeah,
still
16.
1,600.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I did terrible on them. So
yeah, I did not.
Yeah, I was not a good standardized test guy.
ACT. It's the only way I got into Purdue.
Yeah. What was your ATC score?
ACT. What's it out of? It's
it's a 35.
35. Yeah, I got 33.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's very good. All right, now
could have went to
clap.
IU.
Do we
I
have
feel
a
stupid.
Clap. Applause.
Nah.
Golf clap.
Now I feel stupid.
All right, so you're at West Point playing football,
right?
Correct. How was the jump from high school football to D1 football?
So interestingly, because I was a D3 first.
Okay, right.
Actually, the very first game I ever played, the very first college football game I ever played was for DePaul, and I started against Dayton, the Flyers. And they had actually just transitioned from Division I to Division III. So they actually had a handful of guys that were no longer scholarship players because they weren't getting paid to be there, but they were actually massive, huge individuals. And I will tell you, and I've been asked this a lot, the big difference between high school to Division III, Division I, the big difference between Division I and Division III is the speed. I mean, I'm not joking. There are massive human beings playing Division III. And when they go out and you're just like, oh my goodness gracious. I mean, those are big athletic people, and they are. But the Division I guys move a lot faster.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that. I kind of thought that might be your answer. Mm-hmm. The reason why I say that is we know a NFL referee who worked his way up high school, college, now in the pros, and he often gets the same question: what's the biggest difference, refereeing a top D1 college, a bowl game,
right, to
the NFL? And he's like, the guys aren't necessarily any bigger once they get to the NFL from a top D1 schools. He goes, it's the speed. Yeah. And he's the umpire behind the linebackers. Mm-hmm. He goes, honestly, half my job is staying the F out of the way that I don't get pounded. Because he's got guys that are, 6'2", 250, and they run a sub 4.5 40. He's like, that's ridiculous. You don't want to get hit by that.
No, you don't.
That's just a brick wall.
Yeah.
But that's it, though. It's the speed.
Yeah. All right. So April being Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, Bryan, what's your cancer story?
So I went to West Point, then I transitioned from DePaul, and we had 13 quarterbacks that were there. The academy football is a little different because you can literally have hundreds of people go out. I mean, they're all there on scholarship.
You said 13.
13.
We had 13 quarterbacks.
Jeez.
I know. And
How many people were on the team total at the time?
I think we probably had close to 125, 150. I think they still have those numbers today.
Wow.
So now my head coach was a former, he's a College Football Hall of Fame guy, Jim Young, who coached at Purdue. And then he got out of coaching after he left Purdue, and then he went to Army. And so Coach Young called me in and he said, hey, just so you know, we recently transitioned to the wishbone. You were throwing quarterback at Carmel. You got a good arm. You're a good athlete, but you're probably never going to play here ever a down. But I'm cutting 9 of these other quarterbacks, and I'm keeping you and 2 other guys. And these 2 other guys at some point in time might be able to work in the starting rotation. You probably never will. But I need somebody to run the scout team that's got a good arm, because we play good quarterbacks that have good arms. So I said, sign me up, whatever it takes to make the team. So long story short, I ended up working my way up to third string. And it's like I said, we ran the wishbone, and if you didn't even when you handed the ball off to the fullback on the read, the triple option, the guy on the end, which is always the big defensive end, athletic guy, his job was to hit you every single time. So even if you handed the ball off, you got hit. And when you didn't hand the ball off and you went down the line and optioned him, you'd still get hit. So my junior year, we had the 2 guys in front of me got hurt. So I came in the Wake Forest game, and I ended up finishing that game. And then the very next Monday, they came up to me, and we were set to play Boston College. And I went into the film room after school on Monday, and they said, you're starting this Saturday. And I was like, excuse me? And they said, you're starting. I said, okay. So in the weeks leading up to that, my testicle had been hurting me. And what had happened 2 weeks prior was I was out throwing the ball, and I got distracted. We were we started at 10, you go to 20, you go to 30. So we were at the 30-yard line throwing the balls back and forth, warming up. And I got distracted. I look away, and I got nailed right in the groin with a football from 30 yards away. And doubled over, couldn't practice that night. I basically just had to go back to the locker room and call it a night. And so, but that's actually when it started to hurt. And so I was like, and I really didn't notice a mass on it, but it kind of was a little bit bigger because, I was down there checking it out because it hurt because I got hit.
Yeah.
And then, so then all of a sudden the next week I'm in at Wake Forest. So I'm like, all right, this is pretty cool. Because remember, the guy told me I was never going to play.
Never going to play, yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm starting at Boston College. And so, and I'm team captain for Army, and Bill Romanowski's team captain for Boston College.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, of course it does. And so play that game, almost win it, lose 25-29. Had a great game, buzz. And then next week start at and by the way, my testicle still hurts, starting to hurt more. But I'm like, nah, I'm just, it's from the hit and whatever. So then I go into the Colgate game, and that's when the guy almost separates me from the face of the earth. It's a guy that played 14 years in the NFL. From Colgate. I can't remember his name. He was a really, really physical middle linebacker. And so knocked me out of the game. I go to the side of the game. Somebody else replaced me and finished the game. And then I couldn't talk because I don't know if you ever had a jaw dislocated or broken.
Nope.
It's terrible. You cannot, you can't eat. You can't talk. You can't do anything. And so I was like, I can't, my teeth. And so they took me to the hospital. They said it's not broken, but it's dislocated. They reset it, and then I told them, hey, while I'm in here, my testicle's been hurting for a while. So they took this is the hospital, Keller Army Hospital that's on West Point. And so they took some blood tests, and they said, you're going to Walter Reed Monday, because they have tumor markers, and they just knew what it was. So I went in there, and, they said, there's a couple things we can do. You can go through chemo. and you can go through.
So
yeah.
take a step back real fast. When they said you're going to Walter Reed, did they tell you why?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they did. They
On
said,
the spot.
Yeah, they said, we're pretty sure you have testicular cancer. And we're not sure how advanced it is. They said, that's the bad thing. The good thing is that it's a remarkable hospital. They have a lot of experience because they draw on this remarkably diverse population that's the Army, where people are from everywhere. Yeah. And so they said, we'll get you set up there, and we'll fly you in on Monday, and we'll just see where it goes. And then I found out.
When did you tell your parents that same night, I assume, or did they?
They actually, so my parents had flown in for that game, for the Colgate game. So they were there, but then they flew back on Sunday. And then they went back and took care of their affairs. And then my dad was there with me on Monday at Walter Reed. And so I was there, and I don't know, family show without being too graphic. But so one of the things they say when you have testicular cancer, everybody knows this, especially when you're young, is that, hey, one of the chances that you're not going to be able to you're going to lose your capacity to produce sperm. Mm-hmm. So you go to a sperm bank for 3 days, for a week. So that was, they're like, and you got to go to the sperm bank this week because we got to get this thing off you as quick as we can. So I did that for a week. They froze all my sperm, and then I had the operation. And because their choice was two things, they said, you can leave it on there. We won't take it off, and we'll see if we can shrink the size of the tumor down with radiation and chemotherapy. But the bad thing is, it's hurting your body, it's damaging your body, and you might just, who knows? I mean, it might just be it's definitely cancer, but that might not work out. You're going to be in the hospital a lot longer. You'll probably miss your entire year then because you'll just be too sick to go back to school. Or alternatively, we can just go right in and take it off. And then we've got it, and we know what the extent of it is. And
you'll be lighter and faster and jump higher.
Correct.
And you only need one.
Correct. Well, and they also said, I apologize, part of taking it off was also you do something called a lymphectomy. Mm-hmm. So they literally opened me up and took every lymph node out of me.
Oh, wow.
And because the way that cancer spreads is that it goes, obviously it's external, it's in the testicle, and if the way it spreads to the rest of the body is through those lymph nodes. So they know that if they get it before it goes maybe even part way through them or all the way through them, if they get it before that and they take all your lymph nodes out and it hasn't gone in there, then you're cured.
I wonder, because it's been 20 plus years,
yeah.
I wonder if they still do that today.
I don't know. It's a good question.
Part of standard protocol, or only if they detect that maybe it has spread, perhaps.
I don't know. And what's interesting is that, so of course, Lance Armstrong came to Indy because that's where they started the protocol. So they actually asked me that. They said, we got to ask you this, do you want to go back to Indianapolis and do this? And I said, yeah, of course I'd like to because that's my hometown, but what's the drawback? And they're like, well, you have to pay 40 on your dime. And my dad's like, we're good right here.
Yes. That works.
Well, and they said, by the time I was there, they had standardized the protocol. They knew what to do. So long story short, I went in, I had the surgery, and a really cool story, and true story is, so I wake up from the surgery, and the first thing I see in intensive care is 3 Navy football players, and with a football signed by the entire Navy team, which I still have in my office. Wow. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. And they were like, "Hey, hang in there."
Like some good Navy guys would.
Yep, yep. It was very, very cool. So so I did that, and then they did my lymphectomy. And then they came back, and there was no cancer in any of my lymph nodes. And by the way, the kind of cancer that I had, there's a couple different kinds, and I had the most aggressive, most dangerous. But they caught it early, and it just wasn't my time. And then I spent a couple more weeks in there. I think I ended up being in there probably about 2 months. And then I ended up making it back for the Army-Navy game, so I sat on the sidelines and watched that.
Nice.
And then I was back in school in January, and I actually was back competing for a starting quarterback position in spring ball.
Okay.
It's amazing what the body can do when you're young like that and in shape. And then I dislocated my collarbone in spring ball, broke it almost in half. Was right back in the hospital again. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm back here. And then that's when Coach came in and said, you know what, we got these younger guys. I said, I get it. I said, I'll just run the scout team. So, but we had an awesome year. I mean, we won the Commander-in-Chief's trophy that year. We went to the Sun Bowl, lost to Alabama by 1 point. We had a really good team, so it was a great experience.
Not many people can say they lost to Alabama by only 1 point.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Bill Curry was the coach for Alabama. I believe that game cost him his job because they're like, Army, really? I mean, but we were really good back then. We went to 3 bowls in that area when I was there. That was the only bowl we lost, and that was Christmas Eve, 25-24. Oh, it was terrible. But yeah,
not that it still haunts you at all.
Yeah.
No, not at all. No.
Wakes up in a cold sweat at night sometimes thinking about it.
And Derek Thomas was their defensive end. Derek Thomas, All-Pro. The guy was for the Chiefs. Tragically, he got in that accident and he was a quadriplegic for about 6 months, and then he ended up dying right after that. But he was a freak, and he was tough to. But yeah, it was fun. It was a great experience.
He wanted to rupture your jaw, probably.
I did not play in that game. But it was, the whole bowl experience was fun. You would have loved it, Vince.
I'm sure.
I'm not joking. You literally go there and they stamp you with these like proprietary like Sun Bowl football team, and you go in any bar in those towns and you drink for free. You eat for free. All the players did. I mean, I can't.
Not that players should be drinking pre-bowl game, right?
Oh yeah, are you kidding me? It was out of control. we were there for 7 days.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we flew in, I think, on a Sunday, and the game wasn't until the following Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah, and we were hanging out with the Alabama guys. It was a lot of fun. And then towards the end of the week, you start to not do. They have all of these functions early on set with them, so you guys are all together, getting to know each other. And then towards the end of the week, they kind of single out the teams, and but it was fun, good time.
Yeah, nice. So it's good end of the story.
It was a good end of the story. Yeah, I mean, it was because I didn't have to do chemo. I didn't have to do radiation. Now, one really cool story I forgot to tell you was, so when I had my operation and the Navy guys came in, and then about 2 days later, I still hadn't heard back from the biopsy on whether or not it spread or not.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, there's a knock on the door, and this guy comes in. His name was Paul Pasquina, and he was one of my teammates. He was a quarterback on the football team. He was 2 years ahead of me, and he was actually an intern at Walter Reed. So he came in, and he handed me a pizza, and he was the one that delivered the good news to me, that told me I was cancer-free.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What did that feel like when you got that?
It was amazing.
Huge relief, kind of?
Oh, yeah, because I'll be honest with you, at that age, you really don't think about dying. What I really wanted to do, it's kind of a big thing. I mean, when you go through that shared experience at West Point, how difficult it is, you want to graduate with your class.
Yeah.
And I knew that they said, look, if this thing comes back, and that was one of the reasons why I went ahead and went through the surgery. Mm-hmm. They said, because if this thing comes clean, then you're gonna go right back to school. If not, you're gonna miss the whole year. And so the first thing I thought about, to be honest with you, it wasn't so much that I was gonna live, it was that I wasn't gonna have to miss my year and be in a different West Point class.
Yeah.
Some of the stupid stuff you think about that.
Yeah.
But it mattered.
It's big at the time, right?
It was.
Yeah.
It was
still
really
big today, right?
Yeah, it was. It is, because those are all my good friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you graduate, and then what'd you graduate with?
Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration.
And what did you think you were going to do at that point?
You know, I didn't know. I mean, I knew I had to go out in the Army. Mm-hmm. And so I was actually headed.
And you commit to 4 years then?
5.
5, okay.
Mm-hmm. I was headed to Fort Stewart, Georgia, the 24th Infantry Division, which at the time was the lead infantry unit, armor unit, the whole sort of combat team that actually went over to Desert Storm.
Okay.
So a lot of my classmates went over there, but when I graduated from West Point, you have to go to a basic course, officer basic course, and it depends on which branch you get: infantry, armor, aviation, medical services, whatever. I was field artillery, and so I went to Fort Ord. I went to in Oklahoma to Fort Sill, and when I went there, they said, as the Army is wont to do. Your orders have changed. You scored well on the language aptitude test. We have nukes over in Germany and Turkey and the Netherlands, and you're going to go take a battery of nuclear weapons, and you're not going over to war. But, by the way, before you go over there, you have to learn how to speak German. So you're also going to go out to Carmel, California, to Monterey, to the Defense Language Institute, and learn German for a year. So
Not
that's
a bad place to have to
Yeah.
go.
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't. It was sweet. So I went out there, lived there for a year, and then learned German 9 to 5. And then we had our nuclear weapons for a year, and then we got rid of them because when the Soviet Union disbanded, they entered into a treaty. And these were like tactical nukes, like, probably blast radius of maybe half a mile. So it was designed to take out a Soviet tank battalion.
Okay.
Smaller nukes, and so we got rid of those. And then I spent 3 years up in Heidelberg, which if anybody's ever been to Europe, is just the most beautiful place in the world. I mean, there's to the victors go to spoils, right? So when we won World War II, that's where we set up our European headquarters for a reason.
Yeah.
It's like living in a postcard.
Wow.
So I did that, and then I realized I had a lot of problems when I was at my nuke unit with my soldiers because we didn't have any money. And when you go in the Army, you want to do two things. You want to go in the woods and run around, and you want to shoot stuff. And we couldn't do any of that because we didn't have any money because the nukes were going. Okay. We were just babysitting them so nobody would steal them. So I had soldiers get in a lot of trouble, and I was constantly on the phone with JAG. And I just said to myself, you know what? I want to be the answer guy. I don't want to be the guy asking all the questions. So when my 5 years, toward the end of my 5 years, I said, hey, I'd like to stay in, but I really want to branch transfer to JAG Corps, and I want to go to law school. And back then, they were transitioning from a 1 million-person Army down to like 350,000. So they were just trying to get rid of people, and they were being completely inflexible. And so they were like, nope. You're not doing that. You're going back to the advanced course at Fort Sill in Oklahoma, and you're going to get ready to go take a howitzer battery. And I'm like, nah, I'm going to get out and go to law school. Now, my little brother, who's 6'7", played basketball at West Point. He was 2 years behind me. He also was in the Army at that time, and he didn't even serve his 5 years. They said, if you want to get out, get out.
Wow.
They were that desperate to get rid of people.
Wow.
So he went out and went to Georgia Tech and got a master's, and he's doing something else now too. So, but that was the whole sort of Army career thing.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good one. So you get out, go to law school.
Go to law school.
Went to IU for law school.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, that's
Good
funny
choice.
too. So, yeah. So I took my LSAT over in Frankfurt, and
Between beers.
no, it was really weird because you had to sign something because of the timing of it that like you swore that you didn't talk to anybody.
Oh, because you got the test ahead of time, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I took the test and I applied to like a couple Ivy League schools, and I applied to Notre Dame, IU Indy, and IU Bloomington. And I did it on the last day on all of them. That's the last time you ever want to apply to a grad school because they've already got, they're looking for the superstar.
Yeah.
Right? The Vince Todd of the world that comes
Right,
in with
yeah.
his amazing GPA and his amazing standardized test scores. But seriously.
I'm 0 for 2.
Yeah, I know. Well, so I'm at home with my parents in Fisher's living because I got out of the Army. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to defer a year, so I just wanted to be a normal guy because I'd gotten a master's from Boston University when I was over in Germany. They had a metropolitan school over in Belgium. So I just wanted to be out of school and just 9 to 5, like just work. And so I'm living with my parents. I get the Ivy League schools are like, thanks, but no thanks. I get Notre Dame. They're like, thanks, but no thanks. I get IU Indy. They're like, thanks, but no thanks. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So I'm literally, one no away from I don't even know what to do and what I can't get into law school, seriously. But IU Bloomington came through. And the rest is history.
They're smart down there.
They are smart.
Right, Daniel?
Right.
Go Hoosiers.
Totally.
Yeah.
So IU law school.
IU law school.
Couple years.
Yep. And then I got out. So I was one of the older students. I was old. I started law school when I was 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
it has some advantages, I would think.
It does and it doesn't. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Most of the kids that go in there straight from undergrad, they are like, just, they're just so focused because they all just, they want to go out there and get most of them want to get the big paying law firm job, and there's just not a lot of them. So my first year, I was straight B's. Slap dab in the middle of my class, which does not bode well for getting the big law firm job. And so I applied for a couple of different internships at law firms. All of them got rejected. It's hard to get in. It was hard to get in that summer after your first year anyway. But I ended up clerking for a trial court judge up in Hamilton County, which was awesome. He was fantastic. It was it was a trial court judge. And Bill Hughes, who's an awesome guy, super smart guy. And then I came back and I ended up writing on to the Law Journal. They have 3 law journals down there. The flagship one is the Indiana Law Journal. I amazingly ended up writing onto that because most people grade onto it. If you're in the top 10% of your class, you grade onto it. I obviously wasn't that. So I wrote onto it. Long story short, my grades started getting better. I ended up being selected the editor-in-chief of the Law Journal my 3rd year. So I went from really worried about having a job, to be honest with you, I could do whatever I wanted my 3rd year. And a position came up where one of the Indiana Supreme Court justices needed an immediate clerk because one of their clerks had left. And so I saw that come through, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So I called Bose. They had already given me a job at that time, and I said, hey, would you mind if I applied for this? Would my job still be waiting there when I came back? And they said yes. So I interviewed for the job. He and I hit it off really good. Frank Sullivan was his name. He was an associate justice for many years in the Indiana Supreme Court. So I clerked for him for a year and a half, and then I've been at Bose ever since. So it's been lucky. Because Indiana is a great place to practice law.
Why do you say that?
Because it's a relatively small bar, and so people have to be decent with each other.
Okay.
And I see it. I mean, when you litigate against people from big cities, Chicago, New York, L.A., Atlanta, they can be difficult to deal with because the chances of them ever circling back and having to deal with you again are pretty small. But in Indiana, it's pretty insular, and so everybody's pretty decent with one another.
Well, I mean, it's Indy. It's
Yeah.
3 ways back to Kevin Bacon says 7.
Yep.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
It is true. So there's just enough people there that there's plenty of work for everybody. But there's also the bar is small enough. The judges are great. I do appellate law, so I spend most of my time in front of the Court of Appeals in the Supreme Court. Our judges are great. It's not a political process. You go to other states, and you have these just embarrassing infights, even on the state Supreme Court justices, where they're bought off by special interests. They appear to be that way. That's what that's what the lawyers think, and so they're just at each other. But our court is awesome. It's all merit-based, and it's a privilege to practice in front of them.
Good.
So, yeah.
It's good to hear.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're a Bose. We have, like anywhere else in Indy, you need mutual connections, mutual folks and friends in the same network. When did you first become aware of the Heroes Foundation?
Yeah. So my ex, Marty, she was a cyclist. And, I kind of entered that stage of my life. I think back then it was probably, in my early 40s. But she caught the bug. She was already teaching at Lifetime and stuff like that. So I eventually transitioned into that. And then once I got in there, she just happened to be the crew that she was with. And so that's how I met Don and you and everybody else. And so it was just from that association of the cycling aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. And obviously natural attraction due to the cancer experience that you had.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bryan's now a board member with the Heroes Foundation and has been on the board for a handful of years now. We appreciate all the time and energy that you provide and intellect. Dare I say?
Oh, I know that was difficult for you to say.
My jaw got a little dislocated as I tried to get that out. What would you say, and this sounds like a shameless plug, but I'm going to say it anyway. What would you say, what aspect of the foundation, I don't know, that excites you the most, but that interests you the most, and, looking forward, knowing your involvement for the past 5 to 10 years, what excites you about the potential yet for the foundation?
Well, for me, having lived through it, I can tell you that, and I don't know if it was a product of just kind of being away from home or whatever. I was in the Army, and even though my parents spent time with me and came out there and were with me, I mean, it's a pretty terrifying experience to have to deal with it. And I didn't know anybody that had been through it. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I was probably at Walter Reed, maybe in some respects because I'd happened to be the starting quarterback at Army when it happened. I mean, I noticed after a while that most of the kids on my wing were much sicker than me, much younger than me, and most of them were not surviving. And so, to have that, and then I really, other than the story of Paul Pasquino, which was awesome, but Paul was so busy as an intern, that was really the only time we ever had a chance to, because Walter Reed's a massive place, and he was at a completely different part of the hospital, and so I only saw him that once. So there was just nobody there for me to talk to work me through the process. And to me, I mean, the stuff that we do, that Heroes does to help people navigate this and to just make sure that people know that there's people out there to help them. I mean, the whole Lego thing, the stuff, especially when you're kids. My daughter was sick, and she had, a very rare disease and histiocytosis. Her spine collapsed. One of her vertebrae just disintegrated. She has a fused spine. That happened when she was, very young, 10-ish. And, that to have people that in the community that can support you, that can answer your questions. I mean, to me, it's just, if you're a super busy person and there's, you can't please everybody, you can't give to everything. But for me, it was just an obvious choice that this is what I wanted to be aligned with, because those navigational tools, that support structure is helpful. And even to this day, I mean, I still see people in Heroes, bad stuff happens to them all the time. And so, even people that aren't lucky enough to have a close affinity that I have, like through the cycling aspect of it, people are still there to help them. And we should be helping. I mean, there's a lot of very successful people in it, and they should be doing their part to help folks that are struggling.
So if you were talking to the 20-something Bryan Babb of today, going through the same experience, what would you share with them?
Well, I would say, get good doctors. That's the first thing. And because you need good experience. But I would also tell them, especially for testicular cancer, and I tell my boys this all the time, you got to check yourself. And
check yourself before you wreck yourself.
I was
that's
trying not to say that.
Yeah.
So hard.
Yeah, it's true though. I actually tell that to my kids all the time. So, I would say if you have to do the self-examination, and something in my mind, I knew it was wrong, but it really was. And I don't know whether it was a blessing from above that I got hit in the groin with that football. I don't know if maybe that accelerated the growth of the tumor. Maybe that drew my attention to it or whatever. But after a while, after 3 or 4 weeks, and I didn't want to say anything to anybody because I'd finally realized my dream, I was finally playing. But after a while, I mean, you got to be like, yeah, something's not right. So you just got to get checked. And that's what I would tell young guys, is that you have to check yourself. And
if you notice something, speak out.
Correct. Yeah, and don't be embarrassed about it. And, it's just the way it is. I mean, you gotta, because it's highly curable. You just got to check it. You just got to get it in time.
Yeah. Thank our good buddy, Dr. Larry Einhorn, for that, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, I know Daniel feels the same way, but we appreciate you. We appreciate your time and your support and your friendship. So
likewise, buddy.
Thanks for sharing the story.
Yep, I appreciate it. It's an honor to be on the board. It's an honor to be associated with the group. It's in terms of people that, as athletes, especially. I mean, I think to me the biggest part of the privilege of being associated with it from a personal standpoint is that you're always used to being an athlete, and it's really hard to, at least for me personally, to not have that sense of physical fitness. You really can't enjoy yourself. And so that's the great thing about us being associated with the cycling stuff, is it gives you an excuse to be with other great people and go out there, especially for a great cause, and try to stay fit. So it's great to be involved.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Go Navy.
Go Army.
Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I know we certainly did. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell